All right, buckle up because today we're going deep on something called rat utopias.
Rat utopias. Yeah, you heard that right. We're talking about rats, living it up in these supposed perfect little worlds.
And I mean, we're going all in, folks. Research papers, experiment logs, the whole shebang to understand this guy, John Calhoun.
John Calhoun. He was obsessed with building these elaborate rat enclosures. Not just your average cages, think multi-level apartments, the works,
Okay, so he was designing luxury condos for rodents. I'm not sure I'm following.
basically. Unlimited food, water, no predators. He wanted to see what happened when these rats had it all, when you remove the usual evolutionary pressures.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going. So he's trying to figure out, like, if you give them everything, will they just keep multiplying forever? Is there some kind of natural limit on their population?
Precisely. He thought, hey, if you take away hunger, competition for resources, all the things that usually keep populations balanced, you'd see some kind of natural equilibrium.
And spoiler alert, that's not what happened at all.
Nope. Instead, Calhoun kept bumping up against what he called the behavioral sink. No matter how big he made these enclosures, how much food he piled on, once the rats hit a certain number, boom, everything went sideways.
Okay, so behavioral sink sounds ominous. Give me the rundown. What does a rodent societal meltdown actually look like?
Well, it's not exactly pretty. The males, they started to withdraw, becoming obsessed with grooming, eating constantly even though there was plenty to go around. The females became increasingly aggressive, sometimes even neglecting their young.
Hold on. So even with everything they could ever need, these rats basically started to unravel.
It's true. And here's the kicker. Calhoun, he repeated these experiments over and over, changed up the setups, trying different variations, but the same patterns kept popping up. This behavioral sink, it kept happening, which suggested that something deeper was at play here, way beyond just meeting their basic needs.
So it's like there's this invisible line, a point of no return, and once these rat societies crossed it, everything just went haywire, like a train wreck in slow motion.
You got it. And it's one of the things that makes Calhoun's work so fascinating and, let's be honest, a little bit terrifying.
So we've got these rat paradises, everything a rodent could ever want, and they still went belly up. What happened in the long run? Did things ever level out, or was it just downhill from there?
Well, about that.
Hmm.
It was a rapid downhill slide, unfortunately. The rats born into this chaos, surrounded by all this dysfunction, they never learned how to be, well, normal rats.
So even though they technically had all the resources, they never picked up the social skills to like form bonds, raise families, the stuff that makes a society work.
Exactly. They became withdrawn, didn't mate, couldn't handle any stress. Calhoun had this name for them. He called them the beautiful ones.
The beautiful ones. That seems a little ironic given they were on the verge of extinction.
Yeah, it's a strange choice, isn't it? And they weren't beautiful in the usual sense. Calhoun described them as being physically perfect, sleek coats. Healthy, well-fed, but totally empty inside. No social instincts, no drive to mate or even interact with each other, like picture perfectly formed shells but hollow on the inside.
So it wasn't just a single generation that went off the rails, the whole thing snowballed.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting, even a little creepy, because Calhoun started to see these patterns in his rat cities as a kind of microcosm of human society. Like he was drawing these parallels between what he called the behavioral sink in his rats and the anxieties of the time.
This was post-World War II, right?
Yeah,
Think urbanization, Cold War tensions. Yeah, I can see how people were on edge back then.
absolutely. You had people migrating to cities like crazy, living closer together than ever before. There were these anxieties swirling around about overpopulation, social unrest, the threat of nuclear war. Calhoun, he tapped into all of that, suggesting that humans might have a breaking point too, a point where our social structures just couldn't handle the pressure.
So he's basically saying we're not that different from the rats. That if we're not careful, our pursuit of comfort and security, our own population boom, it could lead us down the same path.
That was his big fear. And he didn't shy away from using some pretty dramatic language to describe it, even apocalyptic terms, talking about this death squared phenomenon.
F squared. Okay, that's pretty intense. What did that even mean?
He was talking about a scenario where humans, they get so overwhelmed, so overstimulated and socially broken down that they lose the will to reproduce, essentially extinction by apathy.
Yikes. So how did people react to this? Did they take him seriously?
It's a mixed bag, really. Calhoun's work, it definitely caught on with the media. It became this weird cultural phenomenon. People were both fascinated and kind of disturbed by the idea that our civilization, as advanced as we like to think we are, could be subject to the same primal forces as a bunch of rats in a cage. But there was some pushback, too, especially from other scientists who were skeptical of his tendency to draw these really sweeping conclusions about human society based on, rat experiments.
Yeah, I can see how some of his peers might have thought he was going a bit too far.
For sure.
Yeah.
They argued that human behavior is way more complex than that. There are so many other factors involved, culture, technology, individual choice, things that Calhoun's work didn't really account for.
So, where does that leave us? Are we just rats in a bigger, more elaborate cage destined to repeat the same patterns? Or are we different? Can we actually learn from the past and make different choices?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it just so happens there's another famous experiment, this one involving actual humans, that might give us some clues.
Okay, so we've got these rat utopias going haywire, but there's this other experiment with humans this time that might give us a different angle.
Yeah, it's a classic study called the Stanford Marshmallow Test, and it might just get to the heart of what separates us from those Calhoun rats.
All right, lay it on me. What is the Stanford Marshmallow Test?
Okay, so picture this. You're a kid again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And someone sits you down, puts a marshmallow right in front of you.
Oh, man, I can already see where this is going.
Yeah. You can eat it right away, sure. But if you wait, they promise you'll get a second marshmallow.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Even for me, that's some serious willpower.
Ah.
So what happened? Did the kids go for the instant gratification or did they hold out for that double marshmallowy goodness?
Well, some kids just couldn't resist, and honestly, who can blame them? But then there were these kids, they found a way to wait. They were covering their eyes, kicking their feet, doing whatever it took to distract themselves from that marshmallow temptation.
I'm betting those kids, the ones who could delay their gratification, they were onto something, right?
You nailed it. That's exactly what the researchers discovered. The kids who showed that self-control waited for that second marshmallow. They tended to have better outcomes later in life. Better test scores, better performance in school, even things like lower BMIs and stronger social skills.
Wow, okay. So we've got these Calhoun rats losing it over too much abundance, and these kids, they're demonstrating this uniquely human trait, this ability to delay gratification, to see the bigger picture, even if it means resisting what they want right now.
And that might be the key difference right there.
Yeah.
It suggests that maybe, just maybe, we're not wired to go the same way as those rats. Maybe if we put in the effort, if we're smart about how we design our societies, we can create environments that encourage those positive traits, delayed gratification, empathy, cooperation.
So how do we actually do that? If we want to design cities, communities, even online spaces that avoid those rat utopia pitfalls, where do we even begin?
It's a big question, no doubt. And there are no simple answers. But I think Calhoun's work, even though it's kind of unsettling, it's a good cautionary tale. It reminds us that creating a thriving society, it's not just about giving everyone enough stuff. It's about creating environments where people feel genuinely connected, where they have a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging.
It's like that saying, right? Man shall not live on bread alone. We need more than just our basic needs met to really thrive.
100%. And that's where the marshmallow test comes in. It's a little glimmer of hope. It shows that humans are capable of more than just acting on impulse. We can think about the future, we can resist temptation, we can work towards something bigger than ourselves.
So it's not about picking sides, rats versus marshmallows. It's about recognizing that we have both within us, right? That potential for chaos and for cooperation. And at the end of the day, it's up to us to figure out how to steer the ship.
Exactly. We have agency. We can choose to design our environments, the physical spaces and the social spaces, in a way that makes life better, not just for us, but for the generations that come after us.
So much to think about. Well, that's all the time we have for today's Deep Dive. It seems the future isn't some pre-programmed rat maze. Our choices, they actually matter. Until next time, keep those questions coming, and whatever you do, don't eat the first marshmallow.